Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Trader Merlin Show. It is your Thursday afternoon edition. It's actually going to be a very different show today. You know, normally we dive into equity markets, finance, crypto, futures, options, all that type of stuff. However, I want to encompass all the different areas of interest to you as not only traders and financial markets and investors, but also just as humans, and understand data, privacy, security, and all those types of things that should be concerning to you. And I think most of us are using a lot of services on a daily basis where if you look behind the scenes, you go, holy crap, what am I giving away from a data perspective, and how are these other people using it? Now, I know a little bit about this type of stuff because I've been scared from a lot of my friends over the years telling me, protect yourself here, protect yourself here. However, years ago, 2017, I believe it was, I was presenting, well, I wasn't presenting, I set up a booth at Freedom Fest when I was doing power trading radio with my friend John O'Donnell. And this lovely lady walked by, she started talking about Bitcoin. Of course, that was in my early days of Bitcoin enthusiasm. And we just got to talking, and she did a whole great interview on power trading radio talking about Bitcoin. I've been following her for years, and she still is heavily in the crypto space, did some work for CoinDesk out there. She was one of the show hosts. She also worked for the New York Bitcoin Center for a couple of years. Of course, this is 2013. I'm hoping she still holds those Bitcoins she bought in 2013. Without further ado, let's bring on Naomi Brockwell, who is of NBTV.media. Naomi, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. It's been a long time. I have a lot more gray hair and a receding hairline. You don't look like you have aged a day.
You don't know that. My camera's not on.
That's true, but I have a picture. I have a headshot here that was sent to me, so I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Great. The photoshopped headshot. You've got that all already.
I do. I have it. It's fantastic. Anyway, I'm so glad you took some time out to join us today. You know, this is something that I've been wanting to talk a lot about, but I have a hard time myself discussing things in depth when I'm not an expert in it. And you are. I've been following a lot of your videos, a lot of your content. I guess I'd want to start maybe in understanding, you know, what's the big concern that everybody should have about data privacy and just the tools and resources we use from a privacy perspective?
Well, I think that there needs to be a cultural shift, because the way I'm looking around at the moment, and sure, people are slowly waking up to the importance of privacy, but overwhelmingly, the vast majority of people, when I talk to them about privacy, their response is that they have nothing to hide. And I think that that is a really big misunderstanding of why privacy is important, because it's not that's great. You have nothing to hide. Maybe you don't feel like you need privacy. It's not for now. It's for if you ever do need it. And people kind of mistake that. It's having the choice of privacy. And I think if people choose to give their data away, that's completely valid choice. But the problem is that as a society, we are very quickly stripping away people's choice of even having privacy. And the reason why this is dangerous is if suddenly you become a targeted member of the population, maybe the regime changes, maybe social norms change, all kinds of things could happen. Suddenly you can be a target, and you don't want to be in a situation where you no longer have the choice to remain private. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you should have at your disposal encryption tools. So you should know how to use the internet privately. If suddenly you become a target, you should know how to have private communications if suddenly you become a target. All of these things, unfortunately, are currently being targeted by governments all around the world. In the EU, we have things like chat control, where they want to put a backdoor into every private chat app so that governments can access all private communications. We currently have all kinds of anti-encryption laws. I mean, Pavel Durov was recently arrested in France, and 3 of the counts against him were for using unlicensed cryptology tools. So that basically is saying the quiet part out loud, that they're now criminalizing privacy. So I think that the most important thing we could be doing right now is just speaking up for the principle of privacy, regardless of whether you actually want to take advantage of it right now in your life, whether you feel that you need it. I think that's irrelevant. We need to be fighting for the right to have privacy should we choose to have it. And unfortunately, I see people dismissing the importance of privacy because they're privileged enough to have a life where they don't feel like they're currently targeted, where they feel like they're quite safe, and they're not doing anything to step out of line. And for me, that tells the narrative of, I am sticking with the status quo. I am not challenging any social norms. I am not pushing back against any government policies. I mean, we're about to come up to an election,
Right.
and you actually don't know who's going to be in control tomorrow, right? So you could feel very happy today. Tomorrow, you might not feel so happy. Maybe 5 years' time, you might not feel so happy. You really don't know. And for you to not be fighting to preserve the ability to remain private today is a huge mistake in light of the fact that the future is very uncertain and headed in a very totalitarian direction when it comes to overreaching surveillance.
Absolutely.
So I think that was a giant digression from you saying like, hey, what are some basic tools? I think the most basic step people need to be taking right now is just being very vocal.
Right. Before we go into the tools and resources, let's talk about the targeting for a second, because I think a lot of people are going to hear that and go, well, I'm not a target. I'm just an average Joe or Joan, if you want to be that, and I don't do anything out of the ordinary. But I think it's beyond what most people think, which is anything that you say, whether it's in a text message, whether it's in a private chat room that you've got, a Discord channel, you go through any phone application, anything that you send may potentially make you a target. And I think maybe if I can extrapolate what I interpreted from you is, we could get to the state where I think we already are, where governments could get records of your text messages. And you might say something as simple as, oh, this candidate's a freaking idiot. I wish someone put a bullet in his head. Now you're a target for potential assassination. You have made a threat against an elected official, and therefore you could potentially be a target. And that's an extreme, Naomi, but am I on the right track of saying that these little comments we might make, which could be in jest, could be just for fun, those types of things could be used against us?
They constantly used against people. So Reality Winner, she has talked a lot about how her private text messages with her sister were completely taken out of context, and that allowed the government to arrest her. When she was a whistleblower speaking out against the government, they basically made her a target and then used these text messages out of context as part of the prosecution. This stuff happens all the time. So I think that we have to realize that our data is forever. And even if we've let a lot of data be leaked about ourselves online, we don't need to continue to do so. Every future conversation we have, we can choose to keep it private. We can choose tools that will respect us as consumers. And there are a lot of companies out there that are not respecting us. I think we need to push back against that. Let's vote with our dollars. Let's choose the companies that align with our values, support those that are doing the things that we like, instead of going to the companies that I think are overreaching, are spying on users, are gravely misrepresenting the amount of data collection that's going on. They're hiding it in 60 pages of legalese that are created more like, liability protection documents rather than actually informing consumers. And I think we need to push back against these practices. We need to just stop this normalization of constant data collection and renormalize privacy, instead of talking about privacy in shameful language like, what have you got to hide? No, it's not about that. I have the right to selectively disclose information and selectively reveal information to the world of my own choosing. That's my right. And I don't think we need to shame people and ask them what they have to hide for wanting that. I think that we can recognize that privacy is a human right, and we can choose to be private. And I think that part of this process is pushing back when we see companies doing bad things, when we see governments doing bad things, when we have politicians talking about how they should have the right to see into all of our private communications because of all these threats around us, and there's child exploitation, and there's drug lords, and there's terrorists, and they use all of these terms, but essentially what they're saying is everyday citizens should be stripped of the ability to have a private conversation. Now, if we move that to the analog world, let's say pre-internet, we all had the ability to have a private conversation. The government wasn't demanding, well, in order to forget terrorists, we need to implant microphones in every home. We need to put cameras in every bathroom. I mean, we would all push back against that because that's ridiculous, right?
But it seems the new norm. It seems the normal now.
I know, exactly. Just because our conversations have moved to the digital age, it's like suddenly the paradigm has shifted, and we're some reason going along with this narrative that, of course, the government should have access to all of our private communications. No, most of our communications, even with the closest people in our lives, happen in the digital world now.
Right.
And we need to continue to have private spaces and private communication, private association, private thoughts. And yet the government is trying to tell us that we're not allowed to. And they're using the private sector as one of their biggest tools. You know, they have things like the third party doctrine, where they've said that if you give your information to a third party, you no longer have a reasonable expectation of privacy, and the government is allowed to get that without needing a warrant. So they've eliminated all of the checks and balances we had in place for them overreaching into our lives. And it's crazy because in the digital age, you can't use the internet without a third party.
Right.
So what they've effectively said is, we don't respect your right to privacy on the internet. Right. That is a huge, huge overstep that we need to be fighting back against.
100%. And you know, I think a big part of it is, I think people just don't know what they don't know. Number two is, when you look at the biggest violators of this sort of transparency and privacy, it's the major corporations that exist today. And that's the reason they're the major corporations. They're spending so much money to get you addicted to their apps, whether I'm on Facebook Messenger, or I'm using, iMessage, or whatever application it is. It's convenient. So, if I wanted to message you, Naomi, I'm probably going to, get your phone number and do it through just a regular messaging application. And we use it because it's so convenient. It's just there. And I think what you're saying is, if I was to contact you, you probably wouldn't respond to the text message because of its lack of privacy. You'd say, hey, here's an alternative channel to use. And I think that's where the barrier comes in, is people don't know that you need to use this other platform that might be extremely small with regards to its population scope. So if I'm trying to communicate with all of my friends, like, oh, well, Naomi, I can use this channel, and with Ken, I can use that channel, and I got to use regular text message with this one, it becomes a little more confusing. So the average American just goes, well, screw it. This is easy. I'm just going to use my regular text messenger or Facebook Messenger.
I hear that pushback a lot, right? Yeah. So when I tell people, hey, this is how you can communicate with me on this messaging app, and then they say, oh, I have to download another app. I kind of take pause there and ask them, like, how many apps do you have on your phone? They generally have hundreds of them, right? Yep. But they're upset about downloading that one messaging app that's actually going to give them privacy. But they have camera apps for, taking pictures of leaves to identify them. Or, that once a year they go into Walmart. Well, they have the Walmart app, which is tracking their location at all times. I think we need to reassess our choices. And also we need to respect other people's privacy boundaries, right? So I recently interviewed an activist from Bahrain, and she told me that she's just had to cut off a lot of friendships. And it's made her very sad because she has, maybe she'll have school friends and they just won't respect her need to use private communications. Now, she's a highly targeted individual, but from her friends' perspective, they're not talking about sensitive things. They are old school friends or something, so they don't see the threat. And so they continue to send her SMSs that are completely insecure, or, social media messages that can be read at any time by governments. And so in response to that, she's just had to tell them, just had to not respond, had to cut off communication, because she understands that any information in these chats can be used as a weapon to target her as a highly targeted individual. And so I think we never really know the threat model that other people are facing. And so if they voice a preference for a certain privacy level that they need, we should respect that and we should listen to that. I don't think that we would force people to be, if someone's a vegan and you go to a steakhouse, you wouldn't force them to eat meat. We respect people's eating choices. If we're, going to hug someone and they're not a hugger, they prefer to shake hands. We're not going to force them to do things. And yet somehow when it comes to people's privacy boundaries, we expect that it's egregious that they should have these and not recognize how vulnerable people are in the digital age and that people are increasingly targeted and censored. I think we really need to start waking up to all of this and respecting people's choices when they voice their preference for, privacy boundaries.
Absolutely.
I've started to do that, and I've had to again, let people know, hey, can you talk to me on this other platform? And
you got me with that. You got with me with that one. When I asked you initially, I'm like, would you want to come on the show? And you're like, reach out to me here. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, don't hate me, but I use this Gmail. It's like, oh God, Gmail. I would love to have seen your face when I said, here's my Gmail. And I bet you were like, you've got to be kidding me. This guy.
You know what? I think they have an 80% market share, right? Or maybe larger. So it's not at all surprising. The thing is that I understand so many people I talk to, I know that they value privacy, but they're not actioning that. They're not, their actions are not following their stated preferences. So their revealed preference is that they don't care about the government intruding into their lives. They don't care about corporate surveillance because they're continuing to use platforms that disrespect them. I think that we need to realize that, the state of privacy is amazing today. 10 years ago, sure, if you cared about privacy, you really didn't have much of an option, right?
Yeah.
There weren't great tools out there. Today, that is not the case. And I honestly think it's just people just don't realize it. They don't realize how good email is today if you value your privacy. They don't understand how good messaging can be if you value privacy. There are great tools out there that are easy to use, that have amazing user interfaces. So I think we just need to let people know about them and just show them how easy it is to make the switch. Like Proton Mail, for example, there's literally a button that you can press that imports your entire Gmail account into Proton. Suddenly, it's got zero access encryption, which means Proton can't access the emails anymore. And they're all end-to-end encrypted within network, which means that if you email someone else who's also a Proton user, it's all end-to-end encrypted. And it's an incredible tool. So we have these things at our disposals, and they're super easy to move over to. We just need to let people know that they exist.
I was going to go down that route of, all right, can do like a lightning round of what's best for this, this, and this. Before I get to that, though, I want to ask this question that came in from one of my guys. This is from Kevin. He says, where do you see people making the biggest mistakes with data privacy? And I don't know if Kevin, if you want to be more specific on that one, but you're asking with regards to tools or just things to think about, but I guess I can leave it generic for you, Naomi. Where do you think people are making their biggest mistakes with data privacy?
I think that they are not realizing that they don't have to hand over their unique identifiers for everything they do. If you ask the average person, they probably have one email address, they probably have one cell phone number, and they're giving it to every government entity they're dealing with, every merchant they deal with, every restaurant they make a booking with, every corporation they have an encounter with. And so that single identifier is used to link all of their activities. I think this is a huge mistake. Back in the day, you had a single phone number. There was a landline going into your house. It made sense why we had this idea that you only needed one number. On my phone, I have a single app and I have 18 different numbers in that app. It all goes to the same thing. Like my phone rings, I look at the phone, it tells me like which account it's, related to. Oh, this is the number I use for government things. This is the health number. This is the definitely spam number because I've only ever used it for
You're like
shops.
James Bond of privacy over there. Because my 18 phone numbers? Jeez
like
Louise.
that. Yeah. But it's super easy, right? And I don't need to give everyone my one number because the problem with giving someone a single cell number, well, there are a few problems, but one of the main problems is that data breaches happen with every company you deal with. I think it was the former president former CEO of Cisco once said there are two types of companies in the world, those that have been hacked and those that that don't yet know they've been hacked. And
Love
so,
it.
like every company that you hand over your number to and your private information, that is going to get hacked and that information is going to be leaked on the dark web. And what does that mean? I mean, you've just got you've got nation states, you've got hackers, you've got all kinds of adversaries who are downloading these data sets that have been leaked. And then if they want to target people, they just look for their unique identifiers.
Right.
They will just search for that phone number and see what account was tied to it, search for that email address, see what account was tied to it. And so it just enables them such a clearer view into your life, but also the ability to target you with phishing, with scams. If you are any kind of an activist, if you voted a certain way, or it could be used to make you more vulnerable by letting people know what kinds of services you're using, etc. So I think we need to move away from this idea that we need to give this one identifier to everyone we deal with.
Yeah.
Same with emails. I use a service called Simple Login. It's owned by Proton Mail, and Proton now has their own built-in service. But basically, every service I sign up to, I just click a button. It auto-generates an email that I will use specifically for that company, and that will be, and everything gets forwarded to the same account. So it's not like I have to log into all these different email accounts. It's just one account. It all goes to the same one. But it also gives me insight into who's selling my data. So for example, if I use Betty's Florist at simplelogin.com to sign up for them, and suddenly I'm getting political advertisements to that email address, I know that Betty's Florist has sold my data. So that gives me insight into which companies I do and don't want to deal with.
Wow. That's a great. I've never heard of that. So I was hoping for this moment. I had my aha moment. Certainly, I'm in with you. I have multiple phone numbers for different purposes. I also have multiple emails, and I always encourage everybody, you need at least one that's just your junk mail account that's not really tied to you, but you use it for everything you don't want to be in touch with, in contact. Then you have your personal ones, but this is a much better service where it's using kind of I'll say an intermediary to disperse which emails get what. That's pretty fantastic.
Absolutely. And I can turn it on with a toggle, right? So if I stay at a hotel, I'll use a throwaway email specifically for that stay. And then as soon as the stay is over, I just toggle off that email address. I will no longer get any emails from that company to that address. So I think that sort of thing just really helps us silo out activities. It helps break this social graph that companies and governments create about us. And why is this important? Well, I think that people just look at the consumerism side of targeting and data collection, and they think, oh, well, there are just a bunch of companies out there that are trying to sell me a better pair of shoes. Actually, it's far more insidious than that. There are companies out there that are trying to target you with political material, with certain videos, with certain posts, with certain news items to get you to think in a certain way. I think that we are heavily manipulated, and we don't quite realize how vulnerable and impressionable we are because we think that we're discovering this stuff on our own. We don't understand that there's someone's agenda behind the code that is making this stuff appear in front of us. Yeah. And the less companies know about us, the less susceptible we are. I don't want to be at the whim of some algorithm where my mind is just so heavily influenced because I think I'm discovering certain material, but it turns out that that was just stuff someone put in front of me because they want me to think a certain way or vote a certain way. I want to have autonomy. And this just helps me feel better about my autonomy and that I am trying my best to safeguard it. And so it goes further than just political advertisements, right? And you can kind of see it across the globe in countries that are more authoritarian. Mm-hmm. And this information is absolutely being used to predict if there's a social uprising. Governments are using it to see, okay, there seems to be unrest because, we've been expropriating all this money, there's corruption, people don't like it. Here are the citizens who are most likely to participate in that social uprising based on which YouTube videos they've watched, which Facebook posts they scrolled slowly past, which search queries they made in Google. And so there are databases, and they're not, it's not some human on the other side of these things that is going through and saying, oh, look at Janine.
Right.
She has, she watched all the way through to this video. I think she's dangerous. It's just AI and machine learning, tagging, all the things we're doing. It's just all these different data brokers that are scraping every bit of information they can find about us and then compiling it into databases. And governments are some of the largest clients of these databases. And it's just computers basically going through all this information at high speed, almost automatically, and then making decisions about what it says about our character. And then that is informing how law enforcement across the globe are treating certain citizens. Maybe certain people, they get flagged for looking at the wrong Facebook post, and then suddenly they've been tagged for extra surveillance. Suddenly their computer is infiltrated. Suddenly they have Pegasus spyware on their phone because they're a journalist who's currently looking into government corruption. So we need to be aware that this stuff gets insidious pretty fast. And if we want to protect ourselves, we first of all just have to recognize the value of privacy in a free society. But then I think we need to support the companies that are trying to give it to us.
Yeah.
You don't need to be supporting Gmail by giving them all of your
data. It's just because it's convenient. That's really only. I think it's the only reason people use it is it's easy. You just click here and you log in. You create an email account. And I think the problem is, and we're gonna I'll ask for a list of things here in a second. But a lot of these companies make it so easy, and everyone else is using it. We just naturally flock that way. I want to real quickly say something because you mentioned on how the guy from Cisco was saying, look, if you haven't been hacked yet, you just don't know that you've been hacked. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm not being influenced or swayed by social media or news or headlines? And the answer is yes, you are. You're ignorant if you don't think that what's being fed to you on your timeline. I have 2 alias accounts I did a test on. I did these on Gmail, and I set up 2 different email accounts. I got different phone numbers for each one. I put myself in different states on each of those accounts, and I started to just see what would happen if on one account I started clicking on things that were very Democratic. On the other side, I clicked on things that were very Republican. And it started to slowly feed me more and more radical stuff. And by the end of this, it was like a 3-month test. The material I was getting was so skewed to either side, it would have made anybody radical and really made you go, well, screw that other side. I hate those people. And it's like that's not the way that things are. It's just the way that we're being influenced by these social medias who are gathering all of our data and feeding us what we want to hear. News is about sensationalism, right? Nobody wants to go out and watch a nightly news and watch a cat get rescued from a tree. They want to watch, there were 6 shootings and this guy got stabbed at the mall and this woman got hit by a car and you can see it live video of her being dragged down the street. Like that's what we want or that's what they think we want anyway. And they keep going more and more extreme. So we need good TV, damn it.
It is, we have to be very careful that so much of the world right now is just driven by clicks and monetized through clicks. And so this sensationalism, it doesn't do us any favors when it comes to cohesion in society and our ability to have civil discourse and discuss ideas. We need to be very aware of that and not just start hating people because someone wants us to hate them and is literally paying for our attention in order to get us to think in a certain way.
Let's go to a couple different platforms. Maybe you can give some suggestions. This is a question that came in from Michael. Oop, where it is? There it is. Michael says, what are your thoughts on password managers? When you have a password manager, they have access to every username and password that you're using in all of this. And I think a lot of people are using LastPass, KeepKey, those types of services. What's your take on password managers?
I think they're essential. If you're concerned about storing it in the cloud with a company, you can store it locally. So there is a spectrum of password managers that you can use. The worst possible password practice is to not use one at all, because if you are not using a password manager, it means that you are either, and probably a combination of both, reusing passwords, which is the worst possible mistake that you could be making, or you're making your passwords so easy to remember that you don't need to write them down anywhere. Maybe you have the same base password and you're just changing the last 2 letters and adding a symbol. That's what everyone does. And people don't understand that there are things like rainbow tables out there that have basically dehashed passwords and make it super easy to brute force accounts, that don't realize that if you have a password that's 10 digits, you think that's reasonably long, that can be brute forced immediately. immediately, not even after several seconds, immediately with modern brute forcing technology. So your passwords need to be random strings that are basically impossible to remember, and they need to be unique for every website. So a password manager is essential. Now, there are different threat models, right? If you are super, super cautious and you think that you don't want any company having access to this, well, keep in mind that these companies don't have access to your passwords. They're not set up in a way where they can access all of this, because that would be a security nightmare. Although I think that some skepticism is warranted for certain threat models, because you don't know what sort of bugs are in the way that their security is implemented. So if you're on the extreme side, you can use something like KeePassXC, which is a local database that you just keep on your computer. You can do local backups. So maybe you put it on an SD card and you save that SD card at your friend's house or whatever. Maybe you have it encrypted. There are all kinds of ways for you to manage this. And then, every now and again, you will do a backup and put that somewhere else. I think that's completely fine if you're in an extreme threat model. I think for the average person, using something like 1Password or Dashlane or one of these is completely fine. I think LastPass has had some big security scares over the last couple of years with the way that they've implemented things. When it comes to using one of these companies, make sure that you choose one that has been audited, that has a good reputation. But on top of that, you need to secure this, right? If you're putting all your passwords in this hamper, you need to use a password that cannot be brute forced. So for example, if you use a really complicated, long, unique password to secure your database, that's going to take millions of years at current technology standards to brute force. So that already is. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're at immediate risk. Remember that hackers a lot of the time are not targeting you. They're just going through leaked database and just brute forcing all of the accounts that they could try to get into. There's no sound apparently.
Yeah, that was me. So I do something over here when I'm typing, I don't want to torture my poor audience. So let me revisit that one here, guys. Sorry about that. I was going really private. Okay, I wanted total privacy on that one. I was just mentioning here, guys, that if you have this table, will kind of give you a clue as to what the safety and security of your passwords are. And I use a 15 digit as my default. Sometimes I go higher. And I have alpha, letters, numbers, lowercase, everything. And it'll say it'll take about 166 trillion years to crack my password. Anything lower than that, like a 10 here, you can see it could get cracked fairly quickly. So I agree with Naomi. I think it's very important to use a password manager. The key is how safe is that password manager? And you mentioned KeePassXC. I have used LastPass in the past, and Bitwarden as well, which I'm sure are probably not as good as KeePass, but it's a start.
Bitwarden is great. I think that's a really interesting solution. I think that KeePassXC is great. A lot of the cloud-based companies are going to be great for most people. Someone mentioned 1Password, which is the name of a password manager. I think that's great. Dashlane is another one. There are a lot of them out there that you can try out. You need to secure them well, so make sure you have a very strong password on that account, and you absolutely need to have 2FA on the account. You should ideally use a security key. With that, I believe 1Password works with a security key. So you should absolutely have that backing it up, because you want that second layer of protection to really safeguard the account in case someone gets access to your password somehow. And so if you can't use a security key, then using U2F, using a TOTP code. So like, how you get those authenticator apps, they give you that quick 6-digit code and you type it in. That's probably the second best option. If your password manager Manager is secured with some sort of SMS authentication, do not use that. That is absolutely interceptable and is not a secure way to protect an account. So either use TOTP code or security key.
I think Eddie says here, what about Google password? I think you need to move away from any of the major corporations. I think that's a safe assumption.
Well, I think Google anything, you just have to understand their business model, right? Why does Google give us free Gmail accounts? Why is WhatsApp free on Facebook? Why is Facebook free? Why are all of these services free? Because we're not their customer. We are their product. Their customer is advertisers. They are selling us to the advertisers on the platform. So anytime you're using a free service, understand that that service is there because the company is able to extract large amounts of data from our use of that tool. So just be very aware of that when you're choosing products. And I would opt for companies that, again, respect their users and have very clear privacy policies. If a privacy policy does not say in big letters, we do not sell your data or share it with anyone, if it doesn't say that explicitly, it almost surely is. Because you've got two types of privacy policies. You've got one that says, we will never betray you. And we have the other that says, well, we respect you and will only ever share things with affiliates and certain third parties and in the result of a merger. And it just will go on for 60 pages.
And look how easy it is for us to link to this site as well. So just use us.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that just secure your password manager, and you should absolutely have one. It's an essential tool in your toolbox.
All right. So from an email perspective, it sounds like you, and I think the gentleman in here earlier was mentioning it, Chad PM was saying Proton, you would say, is probably your number one choice for a privacy email?
Proton is a great product suite. They have email, they have VPN, they have docs, collaborative docs, they have Drive, they have encrypted calendars. Think about your Google Calendar, right? Think about how personal it is. It shows your movements throughout for as long as you've had your account. A detailed report of exactly where you're going, probably contact details and addresses for everyone, probably linking to other accounts and a social graph of who's invited you where. That's just a treasure trove of information. Proton Calendar, on the other hand, is encrypted. Tutor is another great company. They just added calendars to their suite as well. So they're also a private email company that is now branching out to other privacy products in their suite. There are a lot of private email providers out there that you can look into.
What was the email real quick? Sorry, you mentioned that. Was it Tutor?
Tutor. Yeah.
Okay.
TUTA.
Oh, Tutor. Okay, I put in Tutor, TUTOR. I'm like, Tutor? Someone wants me to learn math.
Tutor, yeah. Yeah, Tutor. So Tutor Nota used to be the full name, but then they rebranded to Tutor.
I'm just bringing up the pages as you bring them up so people can see the references there. So there's Tutor. Nice. Turn on privacy. That's a great site. Click this little light switch for a free account. It's funny because you can tell where this is from based off the button that they use. That is a very European light switch button. This is not an American button.
Yeah, and generally you're going to find countries like Sweden and Switzerland, they have better privacy laws. And so you'll find a lot of privacy companies based in countries like that.
All right, so email, we've got Tuda, we've got Proton. You had one that was for multiple, which I thought was very interesting. That was simple login, where you can do multiple email account creation for different purposes. I think that's a great one. We looked at password keepers. You had KeePass XC, Bitwarden, maybe 1Password, and then where the question came in here, Big Eb asked a couple good questions here. He says, what about third-party firewalls for our laptops, PCs? Do you have any recommendations there as far as that extra security layer?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting when you start to analyze the outgoing connections from your computer, because most of us, sometimes maybe you'll use Microsoft Word and you're not connected to the internet. You're using it and you're thinking, okay, so what I do in this program is probably private, right? There's no connectivity. And we don't realize that when we've downloaded these apps, like for Microsoft, for example, when we download that offline, Well, I mean, first of all, everyone's using it online with Microsoft 365
Right.
these days. But if you're still using the actual software downloaded to your computer, even if you're offline, when you download that software, it also downloaded a module called ARIA. What ARIA does is it collects all of the telemetry from your session and it just waits until you reconnect to the internet and then sends it all off. So when you start to analyze all of the data that's being sent off as you just go about your daily activities on your computer, it's insane. It will blow your mind how your computer is just constantly pinging the internet, all these different company services. Servers, maybe there's like advertising companies in there, maybe the companies themselves are just collecting it and then sharing that data. There's just an egregious amount of information that's been collected from your daily activities. You can start to monitor that. So if you're on a Mac, you can use something like Little Snitch, or there are some open source versions as well. And you turn it on and then suddenly you'll just be pinged every time your computer wants to make an outgoing connection, and you will get to decide whether you want to make that connection. And you can set up automated responses. So maybe you by default will just deny every connection. And then you can start to see, well, which programs break when I do that? Which programs need me to be connected to the internet for me to use them? And it's very illuminating. Adobe Suite, for example, it's crazy how many different advertising companies and things that it's just constantly pinging out as I'm using this software. And so I turn it all off. I just disallow any connections for anything that isn't necessary when I use my computer. And it really just helps mitigate the amount of data that I'm leaking about my daily activities. For Windows, there's something called Glasswire. I haven't used that because I do not use a Windows computer.
We still like you. It's
I
okay.
try not to. Oh, yeah. I mean, Windows is just
it's the worst. I know.
Nightmare. Absolutely. But if you do use that, you can try playing around with some of this software to just get an idea into how much data is being collected on a daily basis.
Do you feel that these services like the gentleman, Ricardo, says, what are thoughts on like Norton antivirus and secure VPNs? Obviously, I think a VPN can be very powerful. However, in the spectrum of VPNs, I think some VPNs are now being sniffed out for all their different server locations and being blocked. So I'm sure that there's even VPN services that are more decentralized and maybe more private than others.
So with VPNs, you need to be very careful. The majority of VPNs that you'll find in the App Store are shell companies for data collection tools. They're literally there just to intercept your traffic and collect your data. You need to make sure that if you're using a VPN, that it is from a reputable company. So I did a deep dive into some VPNs and chatted to a security expert who basically reversed engineered a bunch of plugins and apps, and was looking at it. Some of these apps are collecting your mouse movements, so collecting what you're looking at, collecting your keystrokes. Be really careful. That being said, you should absolutely use a VPN. Why is it essential? Because every website that you visit gets to see your IP address. And that is bad because IP addresses have these days essentially more or less been mapped to physical locations. So if someone gets your IP address, they know exactly where you are these days. And so you should not, and also it's a way to fingerprint people, right? They're building profiles of you if they see repeat IP addresses come to their websites. And so it's just a really bad privacy posture to be revealing that to everyone that you visit. Using a VPN means that all the traffic goes through the VPN server. I think that today I rarely find a situation where I am blocked from a site from using a VPN these days. If I am blocked, generally, I use a bunch of different VPNs. I think Molvad is really highly regarded by many security experts. Proton, I think, is a great option. They all give you the ability to change servers. So, for example, if you're going to a website and it gets blocked, change server and it'll generally work. Now, if you're using something that's some free product, it's probably going to be blocked, but it's also probably going to be collecting your data. So I would stay away from them. Honestly, the only two that I can recommend very certainly and feel comfortable with that recommendation of Mullvad and Proton. It's not that there aren't others out there. I'm sure that there are great ones out there. It's just that this world of VPN providers can get really shady, and it would require me to go through and audit every company in order to see whether or not I like them or read other people's audits. And unfortunately, there just aren't that many audits out there, or they're badly done. So it can be really hard to find a good VPN. If you're using one of these free ones, stop using it. You should be using, like, if it's for free, who is maintaining that code? Who's getting paid for that? How are they getting their money to maintain that code and, pay for their servers? You need to really start thinking about that. And honestly, switch to a product that is not extracting your data, and what their business model is. You pay $5 a month, and then you get things. I'm reading some of the comments of people's.
They're having fun now. You got them going.
Honestly, if you guys want, you can check out my video. It's called Dark Side of VPNs, because you'll find that there are all of these. They look like disparate companies. Turns out there are so many VPNs that are owned by the same companies, and these companies often have ties to advertising companies. You should be just very skeptical of a lot of these popular tools out there and start digging into them.
That dark side one, I'm actually at NBTV.media right now, and I was going to try to dive it to get that one. Would it be there, or where would they find that one? Because I'm sure we'll have plenty.
They're on every platform that I'm on. So my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Naomi Brockwell TV. If you just type in VPN, you'll see it. Okay. I'm on Minds, I'm on Odyssey, I'm on Rumble, I'm on Twitter. You'll find it on all of these platforms.
All right. And the last one I want to ask is, you mentioned a platform. I'm making notes for myself here. You mentioned a platform that allows you to have kind of different phone numbers for different things and manage 18 different numbers. What platform was that?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of them out there. I like MySudo, which is an app where you can get 9 phone numbers, and it's like $15 a month or something, and they're VoIP numbers, so you're not paying for calls and texts on top of that. That's it. You just pay that $15 a month, and that's your service.
Imagine you're talking to a friend.
And so you can basically set up different accounts, or profiles, I should say, for each of these numbers. So I might have one profile called doctors, and another one called finance, and another one called friends, and another one called family, or whatever. And you can kind of divide your use cases by these names. If you have like a graphene phone that has multiple profiles, then you could download, a different MySudo app and get like a different 9 numbers on every one of your instances. That's just one of the tools out there. There are some other tools that I haven't tried out, but I plan to. You can expect a video coming out soon about those, but we do have videos explaining the difference between VoIP numbers and cell numbers. They work exactly the same. If someone wants to give you a call, it'll just call your VoIP number instead of your cell number. So basically using internet instead of using cell, and works all the same way. So I highly recommend you start doing this and stop giving people your cell number. The reason why giving out your cell number is also bad, not just because you're giving out the same unique identifier, but your cell number uses cell towers, which means that your number is associated with those cell towers. So if anyone knows your public cell number, they can pay to find out your exact location. Cell providers have gotten into a lot of trouble for selling people's real-time location. And even though they all seem to have promised to stop doing that, they absolutely haven't, because there are still services out there that allow you to track people with their cell number. So just be careful of giving out your cell number. I only use VoIP. I will only give out VoIP numbers just because that eliminates that threat model.
Nice. Well, Naomi, I would love to talk to you for hours. I'm fascinated by this. Literally, I want to curse your name at this point, because for the next couple hours, I'm going to be doing nothing but swapping over my emails and my VPNs.
Oh, do it. Please tell me how you go. I want to congratulate you. I'll give you a giant gold star for everything that you do. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, it's incremental steps, and it's, you're right. I mean, I look at right now how many political emails I'm getting. It's driving me absolutely crazy, and I wish I could just get rid of them all. And I'm sure that if I was using VoIP, it would be a much easier solution for me, not giving out my, every time I sign up for something with my cell phone number. Yeah, you're right. Privacy.
Absolutely.
So important. You have a YouTube channel. I've got your page up here, which is, let me bring it up there. You guys have it. It's NBTV.media. You put out regular content. I would encourage you all to check that out. Any other plugs or places you want me to drive viewers to learn more information?
I mean, they're the main ones. We also have a book, Beginner's Introduction to Privacy, if you're more of a reading learner. And it just basically goes through the main 5 things that you can start with if you're just kind of beginning on your privacy journey. But I'm all over these websites. I run a nonprofit research and media institute called NBTV. We just make educational content about this stuff. So if you have questions, just reached out to us, and someone from the team will try to answer that for you and help you along. Our main focus is just that we raise awareness about this and we mobilize people. I kind of started this movement recently. I call it the PRIVAC movement, Privacy Accelerationists. I got like hundreds of people on Twitter to add PRIVAC to their bio, which was so exciting because for me, I think that we've started to make privacy seem weird and shame people and be like, what have you got to hide? And why do you think you're special? And I hate that sort of language. Yeah. So I thought maybe we could reverse that by creating solidarity in numbers, showing that there's a giant community who cares about this and make it normal again. Instead of us being the outliers, let's make this the norm. And so I was like, hey, if you care about privacy, then shout it, tell everyone.
Power to the people.
Exactly. And let's all band together and let's help people and let's answer their questions and let's normalize privacy and reclaim our digital lives.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much. I want don't go long-winded. I know you got to run, but Chad's been so participatory in the audience. Do you have a cloud storage recommendation that might give more privacy?
Oh, yeah, we have a video on the most private cloud storage recommendations and all the pros and cons. So if you want to watch a 15-minute video deep diving into all of them, go ahead. I mentioned one of the platforms already. Proton Drive is a great encrypted storage option. There are different pros and cons of a bunch of different platforms out there. So that's one that's super easy to use. You can also self-host. We explain how to do that as well. So yeah, check out that. But Proton Drive is a great one right off the bat. And then I use a lot of different collaborative doc programs like CryptPad. So the Crypt Drive is also a great cloud provider where you can store things, but they also have like an office suite. So if you want to work in real time with people on a document, you can do Excel spreadsheet type things. You can do Word type documents. All of that is available within CryptPad as well.
Awesome, man. So much information, Naomi. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come on the program. Hopefully it won't be another 7 years before we have you back on, but pleasure. Thank you for educating not only myself, but my audience here as well. Everybody's just loving it. So thank you so much, and look forward to maybe getting you on in another down the road with further updates to what's new in PRIVAC.
Absolutely. I would love that. It's been a delight to be here chatting with you.
All right. Take care.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye. Guys, I don't know where to begin with that one. That was a lot of epic, amazing content, stuff that I think most of us don't really even think about on a regular basis. And, understanding how our information is being used, and sometimes I would argue even militarized and being used against us, is pretty key. A lot of the different things that you pointed out, fantastic. Looking at things like Proton Mail. I will probably switch over and start using Proton Mail just because I don't want everyone to see every single action. I use Gmail, right? TraderMerlin@gmail.com. Well, when I use that, I'm also scheduling guests on that one. So now theoretically, Google can see all of these pieces, all these steps, everything that's in there. And because it's free, as Naomi mentioned, they're making money off that. And I've always used this phrase. We talked about it with Robinhood Trading the other day, which was Robinhood is everything's free. Why is it free? Because they're selling your information. They're also selling your order flow. With personal data, I would say it's much more egregious with what they're selling. So Proton Mail, she mentioned for those of you like VPNs, Molvad was a VPN. I think I actually have some bookmarks here I was doing while we were doing the show. So, and again, these aren't like the only ones, but these are some that have been vetted a bit by Naomi and her team. Molvad was your kind of VPN. You had the Proton Mail. There was more of a firewall program for PC was called Glasswire. For the Mac was Little Snitch. The anonymous let's see, the anonymous phone, I already forgot that one. Oh, my pseudo. I don't have that page up there, but my pseudo was the one with the multiple phones. And then KeyPass XC, which I think I had here. So here's KeyPass XC. That is a password keeper that's a bit more privacy focused. You have Proton Mail, which you mentioned. We have Tuta, Tuta, which is another service for you. Again, so much stuff to think about. I'm not trying to overwhelm anybody here or scare anybody. Just understand that I think privacy is pretty damn important, especially when you're dealing with a lot of, critical personal information. And after watching the Brett Johnson interview on Lex Friedman and understanding what goes on the dark web and how information is just constantly being stolen and sold and bartered and used against you, I think this topic is about as important as it gets. So that was Naomi Brockwell. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Protect your privacy. If you guys are concerned and you think, well, am I worried about my privacy? If you ask yourself that question, then you should be worried about your privacy. I see a lot of comments from people in here that are going, they know the basics, right? You've got a couple basic steps here to take that first endeavor into the privacy world and securing your own data. But, she mentioned a lot of different resources here, which can just make it better and better and better for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, NBTV, where I had it up here, and I've got just so many browsers going on right now, but NBTV.media is where you can find out more information from her. The ebook as well, called Beginner's Introduction to Privacy. You can click there and get that book. I'm sure, I have not read it. I'm sure it's absolutely fantastic because, as you can tell, she's a very smart woman who understands this stuff and takes it very seriously. So that's going to do it for me today, everybody. I'm not going to go into the markets at all. We're going to do just a blank show on cryptography and privacy, with protecting your privacy with Naomi Brockwell. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. Tomorrow we'll back to our normal grind. It's going to be Friday. I have a very interesting story to tell you about a trading platform that I am currently in the midst of a fight with, who basically ghosted a trade on my account that cost me $1,300 yesterday, unbeknownst to me. I got an email from this broker saying, oh, you got margined out of a position. I'm like, the hell? I didn't even make a trade. I'll share that with you guys tomorrow. It will be of interest for many of you that trade futures products, so something to keep in mind. If you have something you want me to discuss, you can send it to the non-private Gmail account that I have, which is tradermerlin@gmail.com. I'll hopefully get to all those questions and answer them on tomorrow's show. You can also leave any comments down below YouTube video. And if you have someone who is vulnerable, you should certainly have them watch this show. Learn more about privacy and turn them on to NBTV.media and our YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a fantastic remainder of your day. I will see you tomorrow.